Welcome everybody to another session with Yonkers Voice. Today we are interviewing Mayor Spano, the second term, possibly third term mayor for Yonkers, New York, who's doing a good job. And I want to start out with Mayor, we're broadcasting with Yonkers Voice, so it's the Ed Koch phrase, how are we doing?
I love that phrase, that's a good phrase. Though I've never tried to use it because it was Ed Koch's phrase, you know.
Right.
But I wish I could have come up with a catchy phrase like that.
Yonkers Voice is a service to the
You know,
community.
Yonkers Voice is doing very well.
It's a service to the community, and we try harder.
Yeah.
Now, so I know your time is limited, so we're going to get right to the point. The Sharing Community Homeless Shelter, if I'm not mistaken, is scheduled to close in June. I know that was announced in December that they had 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
So can you fill us in on that?
Sure. The sharing community, as you know, has been in Yonkers for quite a long time. They've done some wonderful things in terms of helping provide services for the homeless. It's too old, too small, doesn't provide enough service for the residents, and the county is trying to come up with an alternative site that will provide for a larger location and also provide for the services that are needed, especially the wraparound services that are, many of our homeless are not getting. And that's so that's something that we've been working with Westchester County on. I know that the sharing community has given, because they have another use for the property, and they have given Westchester and the non-for-profit several extensions of their contract in order for them to help facilitate a new place for we're obviously very much involved in seeing that this happen well, and that it's as seamless as possible.
So that being said, for some reason, Yonkers, if the statistic again is correct, Yonkers gets 45% of the homeless population of Westchester. So how does that happen?
You know, it's a good question. I know that when you talk to many of the homeless, some are from Yonkers, some are not. Some come from places that are, how do I put this? Let me back up a little bit. So if you're someone who's at risk of being homeless, you will go and live in a place where you can afford housing. Very often that is, Yonkers, Peekskill, cities like ours. And so now you're at risk already to be homeless. You're at higher risk, and very often you end up homeless. And when that happens, obviously, it's something that we have to, we have as a community to have to deal with. Westchester County is the government that's charged, right? Everybody has their purpose. Westchester's charged with taking care of the homeless. And while the Yonkers taxpayers, because don't forget we're Westchester taxpayers as well, while the Yonkers taxpayers don't bear the overall charge of dealing with the homeless, it is something that we have to deal with because we are charged with the safety and the protection of the residents of our city, which they are. And so it's always a challenge. We've hired a couple of outreach officers that work within the police department, that work with our homeless population. And at the same time, we've been pretty tough on the county. If you go back to the previous administration that we had in White Plains, I went after the shelters pretty hard just under 2 years ago. I took a lot of heat for that, but I saw, an individual die on Broadway, and then a few days later we had a woman flatline in the Yonkers Public Library in front of our kids. Now she survived because the Yonkers police were able to Narcan her, but that showed that there was an issue where you have all of these facilities located in one block area. And so what I did was, since we're charged with the safety and protection, right, of our residents, we sent the police department, fire department, building department into these shelters. And they had two orders. One, they were not to close the shelter down.
I remember that.
Right? But then two, you had to issue summonses. So when you saw a smoke detector that wasn't working, if you saw a bed in front of an exit, if you saw gasoline in a boiler room, these were all violations. And we issued every single violation. And we put Westchester County on notice because, at the time it was the Astorino administration, because we said to them, you know what? It's not enough to take a whole bunch of people and cram them in a space and say mission accomplished. You need to provide adequate housing, safe housing, and services for a homeless community in our community.
So
and they weren't doing it.
If I may interrupt, so the onus at this point is based on is on the county
Absolutely.
to provide to provide for the community.
Absolutely, and they know that. And the Latimer administration has been working with us. They, thank God, have the right attitude when it comes to providing for our residents, and we're coming up with new and alternative locations. This is not the only place that they're looking at. This is not the only facility they're building. They are doing others, but as you know, it's sensitive. There's always a little pushback from the community when you put a facility in. We have helped out places like West Ed build housing. We built the Commons on Ludlow Street. We just gave a bunch of ID8 benefits for a new building that we built on Elm Street and a community center. We put over $1 million into the community center and the old Dayspring Church. So we are working at it, but we're not a wealthy community. And so I wish we had all the money we could have, but we don't. But we take at least as much as we possibly can to help partner with Westchester County, because at the end of the day, we want to make sure that our residents live in a very healthy, safe environment, and that they don't forget, we want to make sure they get the services that they need.
Just a quick question before we move on to the next one. Is there a statistic on what percentage of the homeless population are undocumented? I
couldn't tell you that because I don't know the answer to that question. I will tell you this, don't forget, it was in the previous Cuomo administration, you probably remember this, right, where they did the whole deinstitutionalization. Remember that? And they took the money when you had over 20,000 people in state-run facilities. And they took that money and they said, you know what, we have a great idea. Let's close these institutions down and let's pump money into community-based care. And then, make sure people get the medication, make sure they're doing the things they ought to be doing. The economy, not long after that, dipped. And what happened? Well, they cut the heart out of community-based care.
Those money could get reallocated.
Right, and then didn't reopen those facilities. And so now you have a very large number of our homeless population that suffers from mental illness is now not in a situation where they're getting the community-based care that they should be getting. Hence, now we see what the issues we're dealing with. So it's not all, but it's a lot, and that's what we've been pushing Westchester County for, that what we call a wraparound service. Make sure that if you're not just housing somebody, you're not giving them a meal, but you're making sure that they're getting to see the doctor they need to see, that they're getting their medication, and that they're taking their medication when they should be, in order, for us to provide for their quality of life.
Okay, well, it sounds like that's moving along.
It's not moving as quick, I think, as any one of us would like it to move, but it's moving along.
Okay, I have a question on, I have two more questions. I have a question on the budget and I have a question on crime. But so I think I'd like to deal with the crime issue, because Yonkers has been in the news because of this horrendous shooting, and I know that you've been really diligent about reducing crime in Yonkers. This story of this young girl, 18 years old, it's just heartbreaking. And I don't even know where to begin with the question on crime. I think I'd like to start out with there's a $10,000 reward for Jameer Thompson, and a lot of people are afraid to come forward for understandable reasons, because then if they come forward, then they too could become targets. So how can this be resolved?
You're right, and it's a tough one to answer because it's so deep here. When you start to pull back the layers, there are certainly more questions than there are answers to what we're dealing with here. The fact of the matter is, there are too many guns that are readily available to young people in this country today. And while, we can talk about Yonkers being a very safe community, the safest city of our size in America, right? Crime's down 43% since 2012, but that doesn't mean anything because at the end of the day, Maryland is gone. And so, we have to be able to, deal with the fact that a 15-year-old got his hands on a gun. A 15-year-old gets their hand on a gun is not going to end well, period. And in America today, I remember a statistic that was cited to me once. There are 18, mostly young African American males, but there are 18 individuals that die in American streets all across this country each and every single day.
But what are we doing about it here in Yonkers? Because, for example, on one hand, you've got the $3,000 a month apartments by the waterfront, and if they cross the street, Warburton is kind of the divide. If they cross the street, then you're into a whole other world.
What we're doing about it, that's obviously, is doing everything we can to keep crime low. This individual, when he called out those two other individuals to come meet him, could have met in Hastings, a couple of blocks north of us. Could have met, could have went a couple of blocks and went to the Scarsdale. But instead, he went to Lake Avenue and fired a gun and killed that young girl. And so, so what do we do? Yes, our job is try to make Yonkers as safe. Statistically, Yonkers is safer. And we do things like this, where we keep the police department very much involved with the community. We do that in several different ways. So so it's not just about having a proactive department where our men and women drive around and they're proactively looking to keep the community safe, but we keep the community involved with the police department. Stop and Shake, pizza with the police, coffee with a cop, the Explorer program, all these.
Which is a great program.
It's an excellent program, and all that. The Snug program, which has been extremely successful. You know how many retaliatory shootings were stopped by Snug. Greatest investment this city makes is Snug. And so all of it brings down the cumulative numbers. Now, the cumulative numbers are much better, but again, one is too many. But that's what's happening all across America. And unless something can be done to keep the guns out of the hands of kids. And, New York City, it's the toughest gun laws in America. But it doesn't mean anything. Why? Because they just drive, they get on a highway, drive, pick up a gun from a state where it's a lot easier to get a gun, and then just drive back into New York. And so these are, it's incredibly frustrating as a mayor. Because, when you look at these numbers and you look at because we're kind of like the generals, we're on the front lines of making it all work in our communities. But when you see this kind of benign neglect from Washington on this matter, and don't tell me this country can't fix it. Because this country, when this country wants to move mountains,
it can be done.
It can. In this country, when they plow those planes into the World Trade Center, we spent, created an entire new department, hired 66,000 people and for Homeland Security, spent $1 trillion on a war. When this country decides it wants to do something, it can. And the fact that 18 young people die on the streets of American cities every single day, I just say, where's the outrage? Because if 18 white children died on the streets of American cities every day, I would bet you these cities would be in lockdown. So there has to be, the federal government has got to wake up to this and say, what are we going to do about it? Because we can pass all the laws we want in New York State. I could put a cop in every single street corner, but it's not going to solve the problem unless something is done in a national way.
I hate to, I have to segue to the budget, but we could
Yes.
have a whole other hour to talk about crime. So there's going to be a 3.8 property tax hike on homeowners in Yonkers. The budget, am I safe in saying that the budget is in a lot better place now than it was last year? Because it doesn't seem that, I don't have a sense of the rancor that went on between
Yeah.
uniform services.
Well, you're talking
and
about,
City
remember,
Hall.
you're talking about two different taxes. So you're talking about the levy, the tax levy, and you're talking about tax rate, right? So we can't control the tax levy. That's based on overall values. And so when you talk about 3.8, just know that, or 3.5.
$351, I think.
It comes
per
out,
household.
you take out the, well, that first 2 percentage points is something that we can't do anything about. That's in the levy. But the 2%, we can do something about. And I thought it was important that we stay within the property tax cap. That's why we proposed the budget at the 2 point, whatever, I think it was 2.4, whatever it comes out to be. That stays within New York State's 2% property tax cap. Don't know how, but it does. And because we were successful in keeping it in that, anyone who earns 75, any household that earns 75,000 or less will get a additional star tax benefit of about $1,000. And then it will be graduated up from there. So if your families earn more than 75,000 a year, the reduction, the benefit goes down, but you'll receive a benefit up until I think you hit the $250,000 mark. And so it is an okay budget.
But we're in a
I
better
think
place than we were last.
we're definitely in a better place, and we've been getting better every year. Don't forget, when I first got elected, and I became mayor, my first year, we had a $100 million deficit. You know, yeah. And so these are not easy holes to fill, especially in a district that is chronically underfunded in terms of AIDS education. I mean, if you look at, Yonkers, which is the same size as Buffalo, I'm sorry, as Rochester.
Yeah.
Rochester, right, sorry. We're the same size. And the fact that they get $150 million more than we do in AIDS education each and every single year, what does that mean? Well, that means that the mayor and the council, we have to go out and tax the local property taxpayer more than they'll tax in Rochester in order to pay for the things that are required for our kids to get a good education. So
It goes back to that formula.
It goes back to that formula. And while we know that formula has hurt the city, and we have dealt with that for years, we just don't, frankly, we don't cry over it every day. We go to Albany, we scream and yell, we want more money, they give us additional more money, they give us some more money, but it's never a fix in the formula. And so for those who get frustrated and who say to me, and a lot of people do, what are we going to need to do to stop, this annual budget problem? And what I've said to people is, listen, it doesn't matter if I'm the mayor or someone else is the mayor. There's going to be an annual budget deficit each and every year until Albany recognizes that the scoring formula hurts Yonkers, and until they fix it. Giving us $12 million as a one-shot is nice and appreciated. But if it's a one-shot, that just means we start next year off $12 million down in a hole. So that means we have to then go either one, go back to the taxpayer, or two, go back to Albany. I would always prefer to go back to Albany because I know every additional dollar I get out of Albany is one less dollar I have to go back to me and you and the property owners for.
Well, that's an honest answer. Now, we want to talk about initiatives. We've talked about crime, we've talked about budget, we've talked about other things. What about what's coming up in Yonkers? What is new? What's in the plans?
Well, I think
business, what's building, real estate, what's going on?
I think that if you, we have really been able to fundamentally change the way Yonkers does business for a long time. And, we have Yonkers, as far as an economic development powerhouse. There's a renaissance going here in Yonkers. And you know what? When I came here, some of the deep pocket developers that many people wanted to come to Yonkers would never come to Yonkers. When I came here, there was no Mill Creek, there was no RXR, there was no Avalon Bay, there was no Extel. These are huge New York City developers that have now come to Yonkers and are developing here in Yonkers. Why? Because they feel that Yonkers is a place to develop, get a good investment. We put in place an affordable housing ordinance. Yonkers, just 30 years ago, Yonkers was under a federal desegregation order, and they would never pass an affordable housing ordinance. We passed an affordable housing ordinance that was passed 7-0, Republicans and Democrats. We passed it. And now with the new housing that's being built, 10% of it is affordable. And there is a move to even make that number larger. We see that investment that's happening, and we want to improve the current stock that we have. So we embarked on rebuilding all of our municipal housing. If you go to Slow Bombs, every one of our units, 2,000 units, is being rebuilt, and it will be done probably within a year or so. But most have been rebuilt already. New kitchens, new bathrooms, new floors, new windows, new amenities outside. Some of our units, which haven't been touched since World War II, have been raised all together and rebuilt. And that's just what, in terms of economic development, housing, schools. We don't rest on the fact that the state underfunds us. We continue to forge ahead. And we have a graduation rate that's gone up to 12 percentage points. And we now lead New York State. We're the first city out of the big five. The big five, New York City, Buffalo,
86% graduation rate.
86, which is the first time a big city has outperformed New York State's average of 82.
So beyond schools and real estate, what would you say will be the biggest initiative coming up within the next year?
It's all about schools. It's all about development. It's all about quality of life and keeping our communities safe. Those are my initiatives, is keeping the city safe. Obviously, what we had happen here a couple of weeks ago require us to relook at everything and to and see what we have to do. And especially with me, I don't just do things here, but I join with National Conference of Mayors and New York State Conference of Mayors. We have put forth initiatives for our big governments to do something to help us. But for me, it's providing for a good quality of life for Yonkers, keeping our community safe. If our community is safe, then investors want to come here. If investors want to come here, obviously the people who want to work for these companies or live in the housing they're building want to be able to send their kids to good quality schools. And so, those are the issues. There's no other issue really when you think about it, other than the issues I'm describing. I could go on and give you the grandiose plans of Yonkers Raceway and hopefully if they go full gaming and the multi-billion-dollar investment that they're making in the city. But you know what? If I don't take care of the things I just described to you, Yonkers Raceway wasn't going to happen. MGM Grand coming to the city of Yonkers was and being the entertainment capital when it comes to this type of gaming.
I have a question about MGM Grand. What impact will, besides tax revenue, what impact will MGM Grand have on the city of Yonkers?
Well, right now, MGM is the single largest taxpayer to the city of Yonkers. They are the single largest private employer in the city of Yonkers. That's aside from Yonkers and our 2 hospitals, but they are the single largest private employer. They do gaming, they do slot machines. There is a movement, as you know, in Albany now they've legalized full gaming. They've only given 4 licenses out. There are 3 licenses available. The state right now is scheduled to put those licenses out in 2021. We're trying to push New York State to put those licenses out earlier and give Yonkers, because if Yonkers was able to participate in full gaming, then you would see a convention center built here.
That's what I was going to ask,
Yeah.
because if that functions as a hub, would that spur further development in that area?
Absolutely. I mean,
So it's a
think
good
about
thing
it.
then.
But sure, think about it. Think about what. Just think about not just the gaming aspect, but the entertainment that an MGM brings to the table. MGM, you take any big name, Aerosmith, Steven Tyler. He's from Yonkers. I want to get him to Yonkers, but there's no real venue here for him. But if they built a convention center on the Yonkers Raceway site, where maybe you could put 10,000 people in, then you know what? Then Steven Tyler comes here, and then there's a concert here. The schools could use it, the colleges could use it, because in Westchester County, aside from the county center, which holds a couple of thousand people, there is no venue up here where you can hold that many people. But imagine if MGM, using private dollars, came in and made that venue available to our schools,
Sounds like
our
sales pitch.
colleges. Well, part of being mayor is being a salesman, right? And so, and I'm okay with that, because I have to sing the praises of Yonkers. We have a lot of potential, and we have not reached our potential yet. And so, yeah, I mean, we have issues. We must deal with them. We have issues like every other big city in America has, and we hit them straight on. And at the same time, there are more good things that happen in Yonkers each and every single day than not. And I want to make sure the world knows about it, because sometimes the news, and I don't mean this at you, because as you know, I'm married to a reporter as well.
You're involved in it
But,
by default.
But sometimes the news, because the nature of the news, will focus on
The negative.
the negative, and it's not a shot, because I'm not like a politician's going to beat up the news. The news is my friend, but I want to make sure that we're telling the other side of the story too, because there are good things that are happening here. There are kids that are doing great things in schools. There are people doing great things in economic development. There's a lot of investment that's happening here. There are, like I said, crime is down across the board, but we still have our challenges, and we have to meet them, but always celebrate the good things that are happening.
And that's a great way to wrap it up. It could not have been said more succinctly. And you have heard the Mayor, Mike Spano of Yonkers. And that's going to be it for Yonkers Video Voice, Yonkers Voice Center rather. Sorry about my allergies, folks. So tune in, stay tuned to Yonkers Voice for other fantastic news spots.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mayor. I was going to tell you this